Welcome to subscribe. Continually we updated.
You know how they say retirement parties are supposed to be the happiest night of your life? Well, mine was going great. For about an hour. The whole crew from the county planning office was there. 32 years I'd given that place. 32 years of zoning disputes, angry homeowners, and endless paperwork. And you know what? I loved every minute of it. The party was at Maggiano's, this Italian place downtown that does family-style dinners. Nothing fancy, but solid food. My daughter Madeline had insisted on handling everything. "Don't you worry about a thing, Dad," she'd said. "You've earned this." Looking back now, I should have heard something in her voice. Something off. But I was too caught up in the moment, you know? Retiring after 3 decades and some change, I was floating. My buddy Paul from the water department gave the first toast. It was good, funny, the kind where you laugh and tear up at the same time. He talked about how I never missed a single one of his kids' birthday parties, how I taught half the office how to run a pressure test. Good stuff. Heartfelt. Then my old supervisor, Mike, got up. Talked about how I'd turned down a promotion twice because I didn't want to leave the community-facing work. Jim never wanted the big office, he said. He wanted to be where the real problems got solved. I felt proud. Hell, I was proud. 32 years of showing up, doing the work, helping people who didn't know a setback from a variance get through the system. That's what civil service is, right? It's not glamorous, but it matters. My wife, Deborah, she squeezed my hand under the table. She'd been with me since year 3 of that job. She knew what it cost, what it gave. Then Madeline stood up. Now, a little background here. My daughter is 34, married to a guy named Ryan who works in commercial real estate. They live in one of those new developments out by the golf course, the kind with a homeowners association that tells you what color your mailbox has to be. Ryan does well for himself. Or at least, he looks like he does. Nice suits, leased BMW, the whole deal. Madeline and we'd always had a good relationship. Not perfect, no relationship is, but good. She came to us when she was 3 years old. Foster care. The kind of kid the system had chewed up and spit out before she could even tie her shoes. We adopted her, loved her, gave her everything we had. Private schools, dance lessons, the whole 9 yards. I even coached her soccer team for 4 years, and let me tell you, I don't know a thing about soccer. So when she raised her glass, I expected something warm. A father-daughter moment. Instead, what came out of her mouth stopped the whole room cold. "I want to thank everyone for being here tonight," she started. Smiling. Perfect hair, perfect dress, perfect smile. My dad has worked at the county for 32 years. And I think it's wonderful that all of you came out to celebrate. She paused. Took a sip of wine. Then she looked right at me. "Of course," she said, "we all know a government pension is really just charity money." The room went dead silent. I mean, you could hear the ice settling in the glasses. "Taxpayer funded," she continued, that smile still plastered on her face. "But I guess if you can't make it in the private sector, there's always a comfortable chair at the county, right, Dad?" Deborah's hand went cold in mine. I could feel her shaking. At the next table, Paul's wife, Karen, dropped her fork. It hit the plate and the sound echoed like a gunshot. Ryan, Madeline's husband, he was grinning. Grinning. Like this was cute. Like his wife had just told a charming little joke about her old man. I didn't say anything. Couldn't. Something had lodged itself in my throat and wasn't budging. Anyway, Madeline said, raising her glass higher, "Here's to retirement." Cheers. A few people raised their glasses out of reflex. Most didn't. Most were staring at me, waiting to see what I'd do. Mike, my old supervisor, he looked like he'd just swallowed glass. Paul actually stood up halfway, like he was gonna say something, but his wife pulled him back down. Deborah whispered, "Jim, let's just go." But I couldn't move. I was watching Ryan. He was messing with his phone now, like the whole thing was already boring him. Like humiliating me in front of everyone I'd worked with for 3 decades was just another Tuesday night. Eventually, the noise came back. People started talking again, awkward and low. A waiter brought out more bread. Someone laughed too loud at another table. I sat there for what felt like a century. Then Mike came over, put his hand on my shoulder. "Jim, I'm sorry. That was..." "Forget it," I said. "It's fine." But it wasn't fine. Not even close. Madeline didn't speak to me again that night. She and Ryan left early, before the dessert even came out. She gave me a little wave from across the room like nothing had happened. Like she hadn't just gutted me in public. Deborah cried the whole drive home. I didn't cry. I was too angry to cry. "I don't understand," Deborah kept saying. "I don't understand where that came from. That's not the girl we raised." I knew where it came from. It came from Ryan. It came from that whole world they lived in now, where everything was measured in dollars, where a man's worth was his W-2, where public service was some kind of joke to people who'd never served anyone but themselves. When we got home, I went straight to my study. My little room off the garage, you know the kind, with the beat-up recliner, the old TV, the filing cabinet full of papers you'll never actually need. I sat in the dark for a long time. 32 years. 32 years, and my daughter called it charity. I thought about all the nights I'd worked late helping some elderly couple fight a developer who wanted to bulldoze their house. All the weekends I'd come in to process permits for small businesses trying to open up, trying to make something of themselves. All the times I'd bent the rules, just a little, to help someone who really needed it. Charity money. The phrase kept spinning in my head. And here's the thing. The thing you gotta understand about people like Ryan and, I guess, people like my daughter now. They don't know anything about how the world actually works. They think because they can lease a BMW and close a deal on an office park, they're the smart ones. The winners. They don't know that the people who keep the water running, keep the roads paved, keep the zoning from turning into a circus, they're the ones holding the whole thing together. But I didn't blame Madeline. Not really. She was just lost. Following a man who treated money like a scoreboard. By midnight, I was still awake. Deborah had finally fallen asleep after crying herself out. I went to the kitchen, made some coffee, and sat at the table with my laptop. I don't know what made me do it. Force of habit, maybe. Instinct. I opened the bank's website and pulled up the account. The account I'd been quietly adding to for 20 years. The one Deborah didn't even know the full details about. My father had taught me something, a long time ago. You don't show your hand until you have to, he said. And when you do show it, you make sure it's worth showing. I stared at the statements on the screen. Years of small deposits. A little inheritance from my mother. Some smart moves in the market. A rental property I'd bought in 2008 when prices were in the gutter and sold last year at the peak. I printed the most recent statement. Just one page. Numbers don't lie, you know? They don't care about your BMW or your golf course house or your clever little toasts at Maggiano's. I folded the paper and put it in my jacket pocket. Then I went to bed. The next morning, I woke up with a plan. Not a revenge plan, I'm not that kind of guy. But a truth plan. A let's see what everyone's really made of plan. Charity money. Alright, sweetheart. Let's talk about charity money. I didn't call them right away. You don't rush these things. My father taught me that too. Patience isn't just a virtue, it's a weapon. 3 days went by. Debbie walked around the house like someone had died. She wouldn't talk about the dinner, wouldn't say Maddie's name. Just made coffee and stared out the kitchen window at the bird feeder. I hated seeing her like that. 32 years with the county, and the thing that broke my wife wasn't budget cuts or late nights, it was our own daughter's toast at an Italian chain restaurant. On Wednesday morning, I got in my truck and drove over to the old rental property. The one I'd sold. Just sat in the parking lot of the strip mall they'd built there. A CVS now, a nail salon, one of those places that sells overpriced smoothies. I'd bought the land for $62,000 in 2008 when everyone was panicking. Sold it for $410,000 last spring. Never told anyone except Debbie, and even she didn't know the full picture. She knew we were comfortable. She didn't know we were free. That afternoon, I called Maddie on her cell. She picked up on the fourth ring. "Dad?" The way she said it, surprised, a little guarded. Like she wasn't sure if this was going to be a fight. "Maddie. How are you doing?" My voice was calm. Friendly. The same dad voice I'd used for 31 years. "I'm fine. Look, about the dinner, water under the bridge. Listen, I was thinking. Why don't you and Ryan come over for dinner Saturday? Your mom's been wanting to do a big roast. We can talk properly, not in some noisy restaurant." Silence. Then, let me check with Ryan. I could hear her covering the phone, muffled voices. Ryan's tone was skeptical. I couldn't make out the words, but I could picture his face. That smirk he always wore around me, like I was some museum exhibit. The retiring government worker. Observe him in his natural habitat. He says we'd love to. Maddie came back. What time? 6 o'clock. Bring a bottle of wine if you want. Okay. Dad? Yeah? Are we good? We're family, Maddie. Family's always good. I hung up and sat there in my truck for a minute. Family's always good. I'd said it 1,000 times over the years. When she crashed the car at 16. When she changed her major 3 times in college. When she brought Ryan home for the first time and I knew right away, this guy was trouble. Not the kind that breaks laws. The kind that breaks people down, slow and steady, until they think his approval is the only currency that matters. But you know what? You can't tell your daughter who to love. You just stay steady and hope she figures it out. Saturday came. Debbie perked up for the first time in days. She vacuumed the living room twice. Set the dining table with the good plates, the ones we got for our 25th anniversary. Made a pot roast, Maddie's favorite growing up. I watched her moving around the kitchen, humming to herself, and I felt a knot in my stomach. This was going to hurt her. No way around it. At 5:50, the white BMW pulled into our driveway. Ryan got out first, adjusting his watch, scanning the neighborhood like he was appraising property values. Our house is a 1970s split level. Nothing fancy. Good school district, though. Solid neighbors. Ryan once called it quaint. I looked that word up later. It means attractively unusual or old-fashioned. What it really meant was not good enough for my wife. Maddie followed him up the walk. She looked tired. I noticed that right away. A little thinner than last Christmas. Her smile was too bright when I opened the door. "Daddy." She hugged me tight. She hadn't called me daddy in years. "Hey, sweetheart. Come on in." "Ryan." "Jim." He shook my hand. Firm grip. He'd practiced that in some seminar, probably. "Smells great in here." Deb's pot roast. Maddie used to eat 3 helpings when she was in high school. I remember, Maddie said, and for a second she looked like my little girl again. We sat down to dinner. Small talk. Ryan's work, they're developing some new mixed-use project near the highway. The Masters Tournament. Whether the Ford F-150 is really better than the Silverado. Normal stuff. Debbie's shoulders started to relax. She looked at me across the table with this hopeful expression, like maybe, just maybe, we'd all imagined last weekend. Then Ryan set down his fork and leaned back in his chair. "So, Jim. Retirement. You've got the pension coming in. What's the next move?" Golf? Daytime TV? The way he said it, friendly on the surface, but there's something underneath. You know how some guys can make any question sound like a challenge? I've got some projects around the house, I said. The deck needs resurfacing. Ryan nodded slowly. You know, my dad retired 3 years ago. He's been traveling. Europe, South America. It's important to stay active, you know? Not let yourself slow down. He's a retired CEO, honey, Maddie said quickly. Different situation. Sure. I'm just saying, there's life after work. Even if the budget's a little tighter. There it was. Even if the budget's a little tighter. The condescension wrapped in concern, like poison in a candy apple. Debbie's hand tightened on her wine glass. Ryan, I said, can I ask you something? Of course. What do you actually think I did for 32 years? He blinked. You worked for the county. Doing what? Parks and Rec, right? Maintenance, permits, that kind of thing. I nodded slowly. That's part of it. I managed the county's land acquisition program. Every park you've ever visited with your kids, every trail, every community center, I helped buy that land, negotiate those deals, get them through the board. I worked with developers, with lawyers, with state regulators. I handled transactions worth more than your new development project, every single year, for 2 decades. Ryan's smile flickered. I didn't know that, Maddie said quietly. Most people don't. It's not a job you do for glory. Well, Ryan said, recovering, that's impressive. But it's still government work, right? I mean, the pay structure is what it is. I made $68,000 my last year. Right. Which is perfectly respectable. He said it like it was a terminal diagnosis. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. The bank statement. I'd been carrying it for a week now. You know what I learned in 32 years, Ryan? What's that? Everyone's got 2 budgets. The one they show the world and the one that actually matters. I unfolded the paper and laid it on the table between us. I'd been investing since I was 25. My mother left me some money. I bought a piece of land in 2008 when everyone was running scared. Sold it last year. I never touched my pension contributions. I never carried credit card debt. I drove a 15-year-old truck so I could put $500 a month into an index fund. Ryan picked up the statement. I watched his eyes move down the page. People look at a man in a county uniform and they see what they want to see. A cog in the machine. Somebody who's settled. Somebody whose charity money is the only thing keeping him going. Ryan's face had gone still. Really still. The kind of still that happens when your brain is processing something that doesn't fit your whole worldview. That's a lot of zeros, Maddie said, looking over his shoulder. It's what happens when you live below your means for 3 decades and make smart moves, I said. No inheritance from daddy. No company stock options. Just patience and compound interest. Ryan set the paper down. His hand was maybe a little unsteady. This isn't. I mean, I didn't realize. No, you didn't. And that's fine. You're not the first person to underestimate me. You won't be the last. Debbie was staring at the paper too. She'd never seen the consolidated number. She knew about the rental property, knew we were comfortable, but all of it together in one number, that was new. Jim, she whispered. You never said. I was waiting for the right time. I looked at Ryan. My father taught me something. Never show your hand until you have to. And when you do, make sure it's worth showing. The room was quiet. The pot roast sat half-eaten on the plates. Somewhere outside, our neighbor's dog started barking at a squirrel. Maddie looked at her husband. Then at me. Then back at Ryan. You told me they were living on charity, she said. Her voice was strange. Flat. That's not, I didn't mean it literally, you said, and I quote, your dad's pension is basically welfare with a better name. You said that in the car on the way to Maggiano's. Huh. Interesting. So Maddie's toast hadn't been entirely her own words. Maddie, come on. I was being harsh, obviously. I didn't know your dad was secretly loaded. I'm not secretly loaded, I said. I'm just not poor. There's a difference. Ryan stood up. I think we should go. Sit down. It wasn't loud. It wasn't angry. But it was firm. The same voice I'd used in 100 negotiations with developers who thought they could push me around. Ryan sat down. Here's what's going to happen, I said. You're going to sit there and you're going to listen to the rest of what I have to say. Not because I want an apology. I don't care about apologies. I care about my daughter. Maddie's eyes were wet now. Honey, I love you. I've loved you since the day they put you in my arms at 3 years old. You were so scared. Remember? You wouldn't let go of my thumb for 2 weeks. You'd walk around holding on to my thumb like it was keeping you tethered to the world. She nodded, tears spilling over. I never cared if you knew how much money I had. That's not what parenting is about. But somebody, I looked at Ryan, somebody convinced you that your father was a failure because his paycheck was smaller than his worth. And that's a lie. It's a lie that poisons people. I'm sorry, Maddie whispered. Don't be sorry. Just see it. See what's real and what's just noise. I stood up and walked to the kitchen counter where I'd left my old work bag. Reached inside and pulled out another document. This one was thicker. I've been working on something the last few days. A family trust. It's got your name on it, Maddie. Not Ryan's. Yours. It's structured so that if anything happens to me or your mother, Dad, let me finish. It's structured so you'll always have a safety net. Not a handout. A safety net. You can use it to start a business if you want. Go back to school. Leave a marriage that's not working. Whatever you need. Ryan's face went through about 4 emotions at once. Surprise. Anger. Fear. And then something else, something that looked almost like shame. I'm not trying to break up your marriage, I said, looking at Ryan directly. That's between you and Maddie. But I am making sure my daughter never has to stay with anyone because she can't afford to leave. You understand? Ryan nodded. Slowly. His jaw was tight. And if you're the man she thinks you are, you'll step up. You'll treat her with respect. You'll stop measuring people by their W-2s. And maybe, just maybe, you'll become someone worth being with. The silence that followed was the loudest thing I've ever heard. Then Maddie stood up. Walked around the table. Put her arms around me, both arms, tight, like she used to do when she was little. I'm so sorry, Daddy, she said into my shoulder. I'm so sorry. I held on to her. 31 years of being a father, and you never stop holding on. Ryan sat at the table, staring at the bank statement. His smile was long gone. And somewhere in the back of my mind, I knew this wasn't over. Ryan wasn't the kind of guy who learned lessons gracefully. But that was a problem for another day. For now, my daughter was crying in my arms, and she'd called me Daddy, and that was enough. That was everything. I didn't hear from Maddie for 3 days after that Saturday dinner. Debbie told me to be patient. She said it the way she said it for 34 years of marriage, not like a suggestion, but like a woman who's watched me fix enough broken things to know some repairs take time. She's processing, Jim. You dropped a lot on that table. I dropped the truth on that table. Same thing. She handed me my coffee. Truth's heavier than most people can lift in one evening. I spent Monday in the garage. Changed the oil on the old F-150. Sharpened the mower blades. Cleaned out my fishing tackle box even though I hadn't been to the lake in 2 years. keeping my hands busy so my brain wouldn't spin itself apart. Tuesday, I mowed the lawn twice. Debbie didn't say anything about it. She just brought me a glass of lemonade and squeezed my shoulder. Wednesday morning, my phone buzzed. Maddie. Dad, can you meet me for lunch? Just us. Please. We met at that little diner off Route 12, the one with the red vinyl booths and the waitress who calls everyone hon, the place Debbie and I used to take Maddie after soccer games when she was 10 years old, mud on her knees and a gap-toothed smile that could have powered a small city. She was already there when I walked in. Sitting in our old booth by the window. She looked smaller than I remembered. Tired. There was a half-empty cup of coffee in front of her, and she was tearing a napkin into tiny pieces. Hey, sweetheart. She looked up. Her eyes were red. Hi, Daddy. I sat down. Ordered 2 burgers and 2 chocolate shakes without asking, the same order we got 15 years ago. The waitress smiled like she remembered us. Maybe she did. Maddie didn't say anything for a long time. Just kept tearing that napkin. I waited. My father's voice in my head, patience is a weapon. Let them come to you. Finally, she spoke. He's furious, you know. I figured. No, Dad. I mean, he's not sleeping. He's not eating. He's been on the phone for 3 days straight, calling every contact he has, trying to. She stopped. Swallowed. Trying to dig up dirt on you. Something. Anything. To prove that bank statement was fake or that money came from somewhere. I don't know, somewhere that makes him right about you. I almost laughed. Almost. Let him dig. That's what scares me. She looked up at me, and for the first time since that retirement dinner, I saw my daughter again. Not Ryan's wife. Not the woman who'd stood beside him while he humiliated me. My daughter. He can't find anything, can he? Maddie, I've worked the same job for 32 years. Paid my taxes. Invested every spare dollar I had. Never missed a payment on anything. Drove the same truck since you were in high school. What's he gonna find? A secret gambling habit? She almost smiled. Almost. Then why do I feel so guilty? The burgers came. I took a bite. Let her sit with her question. You want to know something about guilt? I said finally. Real guilt isn't what you feel when you do something wrong. It's what you feel when you realize you've been wrong about something, or someone, for a long, long time. She started crying. Right there in the booth, with her burger getting cold and her chocolate shake melting. The waitress pretended not to notice. God bless that woman. I let him say those things about you, she whispered. At your own retirement dinner. I sat there and I let him. You didn't let him. He did it. There's a difference. Not enough of one. I reached across the table and took her hand. Sweetheart, I'm not gonna pretend it didn't hurt. It did. But I've been a father for 31 years, and I can count on one hand the number of things you've done that truly disappointed me. That night wasn't one of them. How is that possible? Because I knew it wasn't you talking. It was him. Using your mouth, your voice, your face. But it wasn't you. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, just like she used to do when she fell off her bike. He told me you were small, she said. That's the word he always used. Your dad's a small man, Maddie. Small job. Small life. Small dreams. And after a while, I started believing it. I started seeing you the way he saw you. And now? She looked around the diner. At the cracked vinyl. At the jukebox that only played old country songs. At the photographs on the wall of people nobody remembered. Now I'm wondering who the small one really was. We sat there for another hour. I told her things I'd never told her before, not because I was hiding them, but because they'd never seemed important. About the families I'd helped keep in their homes during the foreclosure crisis. About the developer I'd stood up to when he tried to cheat a widow out of her property. About the night shift guys at the county office who taught me everything I knew about patience and quiet competence. It was never about the money, Maddie. The money's just receipts. Proof I showed up every day and did the work. That's all. She nodded slowly. Ryan doesn't understand that. Ryan understands money. He doesn't understand value. There's a difference. What do I do, Dad? I wanted to tell her to leave him. Wanted to say the words that had been burning in my throat since the moment I saw that trust document with Margaret Deborah Hartwell, beneficiary, written across the top. Wanted to tell her to come home, to bring her things, to let me and Debbie take care of her until she remembered who she was before Ryan got his hands on her. But that wasn't my decision to make. You do what you think is right, I said. But you do it knowing the truth. All of it. Including that trust one set up. It's not charity. It's not guilt money. It's 34 years of your mother and me skipping vacations and driving old cars and putting away whatever we could so that someday, if you ever needed it, you'd have a way out. A way out? From anyone. Any situation. Any person who made you feel small. She stared at me. Her eyes were wet again, but different this time. Not sad. Something closer to seeing clearly for the first time in years. The money's not the point, she said. Is it? No. The money's just paper. The point is that you never, ever have to stay somewhere because you can't afford to leave. The waitress came by and refilled our coffee. Outside, the afternoon sun was turning the parking lot into a shimmering sheet of heat. Somewhere a car radio was playing an old Willie Nelson song. Ryan asked me to talk to you, Maddie said quietly. About what? About giving him access to the trust. For one of his development deals. He said it would be a family investment. He said it would triple in 18 months. I set my coffee cup down. Looked at my daughter. What did you tell him? I told him I'd think about it. She paused. That was before I came here. And now? She picked up her hamburger. Took a bite. Chewed slowly. Then she looked at me with something I hadn't seen in her eyes since she was 17 years old, standing in the driveway telling me she was going to state on an academic scholarship and nobody was going to stop her. Now I'm thinking that trust stays exactly where it is. With my name on it. Only mine. I didn't smile. Didn't cheer. Didn't do anything except nod and take another bite of my burger. But inside, I was the proudest man in that diner. Maybe the proudest man in the whole damn county. We finished our lunch. Walked out to the parking lot together. She hugged me, both arms, tight, the way she'd hugged me on Saturday night. I love you, Daddy. I love you too, sweetheart. She got in her car. Rolled down the window. I don't know what's gonna happen with Ryan, she said. I really don't. But I know one thing. What's that? I'm not small. And neither are you. She drove away. I stood in that parking lot for a long time, watching her taillights disappear down Route 12, thinking about all the years and all the sacrifice and all the quiet mornings when nobody was watching and nobody was clapping. It was worth it. Every single second. I drove home. Parked the old F-150 in the garage. Walked inside. Debbie was in the kitchen, cutting vegetables for dinner. She looked up when I came in. How'd it go? I sat down at the kitchen table. The same table where we'd eaten breakfast for 34 years. The same table where Maddie used to do her homework. The same table where Debbie had held my hand through every hard thing that ever happened to us. I think she's gonna be okay. Debbie put down the knife. Came over and sat beside me. Took my hand. And you? I thought about it for a minute. Thought about Ryan sitting in his big house, staring at a bank statement he couldn't understand. Thought about Maddie, finally seeing the truth. Thought about all the men like Ryan I'd known over the years, men who measured everything in dollars because they didn't know how to measure anything in meaning. Yeah, I said. I'm gonna be okay too. Outside, the neighborhood was quiet. Somewhere down the street, a lawnmower started up. A dog barked. The world kept spinning, same as it always had. But something had shifted. Something important. I'd spent 32 years doing a job most people didn't understand. Saving money most people didn't see. Building a life most people would call small. But that afternoon, sitting in my kitchen with my wife of 34 years, I understood something those people never would. Small isn't the same as weak. Quiet isn't the same as defeated. And patience, real patience, the kind my father taught me, the kind that waits decades if it has to, isn't passive. It's the most powerful weapon a man can have. Ryan would never understand that. Men like him never do. But Maddie would. Maybe not today. Maybe not tomorrow. But someday. And that was enough. That was everything. I got up, walked out to the garage, and started working on the truck. There was a rattle in the engine I'd been meaning to fix for weeks. Some things take time. Some things take patience. And some things, the important things, take both. I had plenty of both. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't in any hurry at all.